When police encounters get out of hand, it's critical to know the do's and don'ts of how to deal with good cops gone bad, so that police don't escalate the situation and use the lawful but awful techniques they've been trained to use against you. One of the most common lawful but awful techniques the police use is the taser. Many people think being tased is no big deal, but if you've ever been tased, you know it's a very big deal, especially if the police unlawfully use the taser against you. Here are 2 examples when police pulled out their taser, and we're going to examine 10 lessons that we can learn from these encounters. The first encounter, I want to show you the lawful but awful. In this situation, we find a 65-year-old woman being pulled over for a busted taillight.
Hello.
Hi.
So what's going on with your truck?
It's been hit. It's drivable.
Yeah, but it's not legal because you got a busted taillight. How long ago has it been like that?
Probably about 6 months. My name's Hamill.
Hamill, huh? Related to Hank?
I'm his mother.
Oh, okay. Yeah, busted taillight seems to be a pattern with the Hamills.
Now come on, man. Why do cops have to talk like this to people? Right away, he knows this woman's son. And when he sees that she has a busted taillight, he says, a busted taillight. Must be a pattern with the Hamills. You may be asking, are cops allowed to talk to people like this? Unfortunately, yes. But you have to remember one thing. Sometimes this is intentional by the officer, and they're trying to bait you into responding negatively. So remember, never give them any reason to escalate the situation. In fact, let's listen to her response.
Well, y'all had a headlight out on one of your cop cars the other night.
We did?
Yeah, but I just don't tell you.
Now, when the cop comes back and presents her the $80 citation, she strongly disagreed with him, and things went from bad to worse really quick.
Well, I did issue for a defective equipment. It's $80. You have till September 16th to take care of this. Get you to sign there with the Exodus.
So you don't even give a warning?
You've been driving around for 6 months like that.
I'm truthful.
Well, I'm not going to give you a warning for something you've been driving for 6 months.
This brings us to lesson number 1. Don't talk so much. This woman had a right to remain silent, and she was sorely mistaken that being truthful with the officer would give her an advantage. All she really had to do was to provide her driver's license and her proof of insurance and remain silent about the whole situation. Now, because she spoke, the cop was using it as a justification not to give her a warning and to escalate the situation. Here's another lesson you have to learn when it comes to situations like this. Lesson number 2. Fight it in court, not on the roadside. Now we see the cop pushing the ticket on her, demanding her signature. Let's see what happens.
Either way, I'm issuing you a citation. Sign there, please.
Well, I don't want to sign it because I don't want to do $80.
You don't want to sign it?
No, because I don't think that I deserve to pay $80 for something that is fixable and I can fix it.
All
If
right.
that's all you want
Go ahead
to
and
do.
step out of the car.
Look, if a cop gives you a citation and demands your signature, understand that when you sign the ticket, you are only acknowledging your physical receipt of the ticket. You are not pleading guilty or agreeing to anything. The moment she refused to sign the citation, we see the cop's attitude completely shift, and now he demands her to get out of the car. Why? Because now he has the right to arrest her for the citation. The crazy thing is, in Oklahoma, failure to sign a citation could actually result in your arrest. This brings us to lesson number 3. Never resist or refuse arrest, especially the lawful but awful arrest. When this woman is being told she's being placed under arrest, she refuses to hear it and defiantly says she's not under arrest. And well, just watch and see how it turns out for her.
Because you're under arrest. Step out. Step out. Step out. I'm giving you a lawful order. Step out.
You be fair with me and I'll be fair with you.
Step out.
No.
You're under arrest.
No, I'm not.
I'm placing you under arrest. Step
you
out.
are full of shit because you're not placing me under no arrest.
Now, there are so many lessons here. The moment you refuse to be detained or arrested, the police can now escalate the situation in most states and charge you with the crime of resisting arrest, a misdemeanor offense. I'm guessing this lady is just upset about how her son was previously treated by the police, and now she's demanding that she be treated fairly. But that doesn't change the fact that if an officer is dead set on arresting you, choosing to resist that arrest will now make things 10 times worse. You are not going to talk your way out of an arrest if an officer has decided he's going to do it. And this brings us to lesson number 4. Play it cool, Not crazy. This lady starts cursing and yelling and demanding that the officer treat her fairly.
Step out.
No, I'm not. No, I am
305,
not.
303. Do not take off.
Shut up and give me that and I'll sign it.
Now, here is when things get dumb. She is yelling and cursing at the police officer, and then she decides she will comply with his request to sign the ticket. Could the officer have given her the ticket and had her sign it and then let her be on her way? Yes, he could have. But it was never going to happen because he didn't like her attitude. If she had played it cool, the officer might have given her that chance. This brings us to lesson number 5. Never leave the scene when the police officer tells you that you are under arrest.
Step out.
No.
We're beyond that.
Do you want me
Step
to-
out.
When this woman fled the scene, this situation went from bad to worse. She will now be arrested with evading in a vehicle, a very serious felony crime with possible prison time. And now the cops are going to draw their guns and things could get deadly quickly.
Get out of the car. Get out of the car.
I am not. You better leave me.
Lesson number 6, don't fight the police if they're trying to force you out of the car. Look, I know this lady felt like she was being wronged, but if you start pushing back against the police, not only is that considered resisting arrest, but the police are now going to start using force against you to get what they want. Compliance. But how much force is reasonable by the cops? Here's the standard. The law requires the cops to use the least amount of force necessary, and the use of deadly force must only be used as a last resort. In this situation, the cops could not use deadly force. Why? Because in Tennessee versus Garner, the United States Supreme Court held that shooting an unarmed, fleeing teenager from the scene of a burglary was a violation of the Fourth Amendment because the crime of burglary does not involve deadly force. Because there was no reason to believe that a fleeing teenager posed a risk of death or serious bodily injury to others if he escaped, the Supreme Court ruled that it was illegal for the cops to use deadly force. In this situation, the police cannot use deadly force against this woman. So, let's see what happened.
Put your hands behind your
Leave
back.
me alone.
Put your hands behind your back. Now.
This brings us to lesson number 7. Never trash talk the police if you're about to be arrested. Now look, is there a time when you can defend yourself against illegal excessive force by the police? Technically, yes. However, this lady may think that she is defending herself because it hurts when he's grabbing at her. But when she refuses to submit, now the officer is going to escalate the situation to get what he wants. Compliance. Let's see what happens.
I said leave me alone and I mean it. Leave me alone.
Put your hands behind your back.
As a general rule, once you've been told that you're being placed under arrest, if you start trash talking cops and you make sudden movements, get ready for the cops to put you down. In fact, this is usually when the cops get out the guns and the tasers. Was the officer allowed to use the taser when this woman kicked him? Legally, yes. This is the lawful but awful situation I was talking about earlier. Most courts would hold that the use of a taser when a suspect kicks a police officer will be deemed reasonable under the circumstances. Now, how did this turn out for this lady? This lady learned these lessons the hard way. Hamill pleaded guilty to resisting arrest, obstruction, and operating a vehicle with defective equipment. All of those charges were misdemeanors. And fortunately, her lawyers were able to work out a deal where the assault and battery charge against the police was dismissed. Hamill received a 4-year deferred sentence and she had to pay a $50 fine for each count. And I want you to remember, this could have been a simple signature and she would have been on her way. Don't let the cops make you the bad guy. Situation number 2. Let's look at when good cops go bad. I want you to imagine a 75-year-old man being tased, even though he immediately complied with an officer's request to put down a weapon. That's exactly what happened in Colorado. This story all started when a resident of a Colorado apartment complex called the police claiming they had been assaulted by their neighbor over a noise complaint. Cops came to the scene and knocked on the door of 75-year-old Michael Clark, and they found him standing there in his boxers. Let's take a look.
Last night or night before, What do you want?
What the f? Put that mother down. Put it down, mother down! Put it down!
Now, here is where things get crazy. Mr. Clark goes to the front door, opens the door, and the cops find him standing there with a sword made from the bill of a sawfish. He looks back at him and says, "What do you want?" Can you guess what the cops said? They told him to put the sword down. Does he? Absolutely. This brings us to lesson number 8. Cops are going to overreact when they see a weapon. Did this man have a right to approach his door with a weapon if he was in fear for his life? Yes, he did. Here's where the cops screwed up. In this situation, the police should have identified themselves as the people knocking on the front door so that Mr. Clark would have known it was the cops at his door. In that situation, Mr. Clark may have then put down his weapon and then approached the front door. However, he had no idea who was at his front door. And because the cops did not identify themselves like they were supposed to, it was reasonable to believe that Mr. Clark may have thought it was his aggressive neighbor who may have been threatening him, and he wanted to be ready with a weapon to stand his ground in his own home. But what happens next?
Get on the ground now! Back up, back up, back up. Get out here right now! Get out here!
Get
on the ground!
No, they hit that wall so hard, I thought they were going to come through the wall.
What you gonna? Okay.
Lesson number 9, get on the ground if the cops demand it, especially if they pull out their guns. The cops demand Mr. Clark to get on the ground. He says no, and now the cops are pulling out their taser to put him on the ground. The man ends up unconscious, and then they literally drag his body out into the hallway. Keep in mind that this was an elderly man, and the force of a taser can seriously hurt anyone, but especially someone like him. Wait around till the end and I'll actually tell you how bad it was for Mr. Clark. Another issue here is that this elderly man may not have actually known what was going on, and he didn't exactly know how to react. But as a general rule, if the cops demand that you get on the ground and you refuse to do so, get ready for things to get dangerous and get ready for them to be violent. Now, here is where things get shady. What does one of the cops do? He walks over to where the sword was, he picks it up, and he does what?
Talk to me. Sir, talk to me.
Whoa, did you hear that thud noise? Listen to it again. That was the noise of the cop walking over, grabbing the sword, and dropping it in the hallway, and then he gets out his phone and he starts taking pictures of it. How did all this turn out? Well, first of all, the cop that tampered with the evidence and moved it into the hallway was terminated, and then he was charged with assault. Any officer who picks up evidence and then tries to move it to a different location to make the officer's actions look justified should always be terminated. Why assault? Because to the credit of the police department and the prosecution, they realize that a police officer cannot just use force because they are in fear. The use of the force must be justified. This officer may claim that he felt fear when this old man refused to get on the ground when he was ordered to. But you have to remember that the use of force must always be filtered through the standard. The standard is that the police must use the least amount of force necessary in a situation, and deadly force must only be used as a last resort. Over and over again, most state laws governing the justification of the use of force by police use the language, when and to the degree the actor reasonably believes the force is immediately necessary. That belief by the officer must be reasonable, which means an objective officer would believe force was necessary in the same situation. This is the standard an officer is judged by, which has nothing to do with fear. I see far too many officers claim that they believed a suspect might have a weapon, and now they use that as a basis to use force. I want you to understand something. Might does not equal reasonable. And for this poor old man, he didn't even have a weapon. He sat his weapon down on top of that cabinet, and they still tased him. Finally, lesson number 10. Tasers can sometimes be deadly. In fact, the ACLU has documented that the police misuse of tasers has resulted in the death of children, pregnant women, elderly, as well as the mentally handicapped. And guess what the reason was they used the taser in those situations? the same as Mr. Clark. It was because they passively refused a command from a police officer, and then they turn around and use the taser on the suspect, which resulted in their death. In fact, the United Nations actually declared the use of tasers as a torture tool in 2007. Peter Moskos, a former Baltimore police officer, said it best when he said, "A taser shouldn't be used if there are 4 cops surrounding a suspect. In that situation, you just grab the man." That's exactly what should have happened in the situation with Mr. Clark. But what did happen to Mr. Clark? As a result of getting tased, Mr. Clark suffered a stroke. He is no longer able to walk on his own, drive a car, or actually even take care of himself. Fortunately for him, his family filed a lawsuit against the Idaho Springs Police Department and settled the lawsuit for $7 million because of the way that the police department handled the situation. Do you think that settlement was excessive? You tell me in the comments. Now, what if you find yourself on the business end of cops coming to your front door or pulling you over on a traffic stop, and now they start asking you questions and you feel like they might be tricking you? Check out this next video to learn 10 ways the police try to outsmart you. Know your rights and protect yourself. I'll see you over there.